Kanye finally dropped a new album last night. I'm not gonna lie, this rollout has been a little bit weird for me. I've been a Kanye fan since Late Registration. Well, the rollout for Late Registration. I've liked Kanye since College Dropout came out. Um, and this has probably been the hardest time I've ever had defending him. Kanye's had some pretty controversial stuff in the past, but nothing has ever really compared to this rollout specifically. When it comes to the Trump stuff, I don't really care. Like, I can kind of understand where Kanye is coming from. His personality and Trump's personality kind of mesh together in a certain way that I can understand Kanye seeing himself in Trump a little bit. So that didn't really surprise me. And I think a lot of his comments are a little bit misconstrued because he's terrible at articulating himself. Uh, Especially the 400 years of slavery, like saying that it was a choice. Um, when he was doing all of that Trump stuff, and then he kind of came out with the Charlemagne the God interview, and he kind of clarified it. He clarified kind of what I thought he was meaning by his love for Trump, which, like I said, he sees himself a little bit in Trump, and that he can. He feels like since Trump won, anything's really possible. Um, you know, he kind of clarified that in the Charlemagne the God interview, and then the exact same day he comes out with the TMZ thing, and he just kind of put his foot in his mouth that way. Like, I somewhat understand what he's trying to say, and it's more or less mental in slavery, but that's just something that you can't really joke about. I don't think. Like, if you're gonna say a statement like that, you really have to um, come back with what you mean. When he says a blanket statement like that, and it's in a room full of people, and he's not able to articulate himself, then it's just going to offend people. Especially something like TMZ that's going to just take a headline like that and run with it, rather than the full context of the conversation. Not that the conversation really had that much context involved with it. Um, but yeah, this rollout has been completely weird. When he announced he was doing the 5 albums, super excited. I've always been a fan of Pusha T. I've always been a fan of Nas. Obviously, Kid Cudi and Kanye are two of my favorite artists of all time. And hearing that they're going to do a collaborative project, absolutely amazing. Um, and this Kanye album, I really was not too sure that it was going to come out. Even like the Pusha T album, maybe a week before it came out, I didn't think it was going to, because we didn't have any sort of news regarding it. Uh, the Kanye album had no track list, no album cover, no album title. It reminded me a bit of the Life of Pablo rollout, but even the Life of Pablo rollout, we were seeing like track listing and him reordering the tracks, him changing the title, etc., etc. But this time, it felt like, I don't know, it just wasn't, it was hard to be excited, because I really had no idea what to expect. So last night, at 10 o'clock, it was announced that this app, the Wave radio app and Stationhead, were going to be doing a live stream of the listening party in Wyoming, Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So obviously I'm pretty excited, because that confirms that the album's going to come out. I tune in at 10, pretty much when I get home from work, and I'm sitting here for 2 hours watching people throw logs on a fire and horses in the background. Really testing my patience, to be honest with you. But when the album finally premiered, from the very moment that it came out, I was super excited. Before I really get into what I liked about the album, I just have a few initial complaints. Um, right off the bat, two of the lines on All Mine, like the cum line and the tits line, just kind of made me cringe. They're like Yeezus level lines to me, and I can kind of expect Kanye to do something like that. It's just like, I don't know. I was shaking my head a little bit when that came out. And then my other biggest complaint was that Yikes, the second track, kind of felt a bit like a Yeezus song. It didn't really fit with the rest of the album to me. And going back to All Mine, it kind of goes against the message of violent crimes at the end. How he talks about how, which I'll get into in a little bit, but he kind of talks about his daughter growing up and how people, especially men, act a certain way towards women. And then he has a song about all of these different people, all of these famous people cheating, and it just didn't really feel like the best song to be included on the album. Um, but I think it kind of makes sense, which I can go into in a sec here. Everything else on the album, I absolutely love, especially once it goes from Wouldn't Leave all the way to the end with Violent Crimes. I feel like that's like vintage Kanye, and I think he did it really, really well. Like the sound of the album, absolutely amazing. To me, the album kind of sounds like a musical version of being diagnosed with bipolar. Obviously, with the album cover, Kanye is kind of announcing that he is bipolar, something that a lot of people had already thought of years before. Um, but how it ties into the album, I think the first three tracks sound like he's more or less in a manic state. A lot of the stuff that he's talking about, like the kind of being with other women, some of his actions, stuff of that nature, are kind of detailed on those first three songs, especially the first one. And then by the fourth song, it sounds like he's trying to more or less recover from those actions of being in a manic state. Not that he didn't mean some of those things, but he's kind of like looking at what he's done and looking at Kim and being like, why are you still around when I mess up so badly? But in the intro, he says the most beautiful thoughts are always beside the darkest. And he talks about the duality of loving himself while at the same time feeling like he wants to kill himself. And I feel like that's something that he's struggled with pretty much like his entire career. I think his ego, in a lot of ways, is kind of to compensate for his perception of himself, because he always wants to be better than he actually is. And he often speaks certain things into fruition to kind of make it so that he has to be that great. But with the intro, he starts off and it's very dark and introspective, and then he kind of flips it, and he's kind of all over the place. And I feel like that's more or less the beginning of the manic state. And he talks about being a superhero, and you kind of hear that the scream on Yeezus, like on one of the tracks on Yeezus, he does that really like high pitched scream, and he does that on this song. And I feel like Yeezus was kind of like him being in a manic state pretty much the entire album. But going back to Wouldn't Leave, he talks about his recent comments and actions and how Kim really reacted to them. The end of the first verse, where he talks about Kim being worried that she'll lose everything over his actions, to me felt super genuine and actually made me have a lot of respect for Kim Kardashian. Like after his comments, like the 400 years of slavery was a choice. She's calling him and saying, we're gonna lose everything, and she's having a panic attack, and he gives her the option, like, you can leave me if you want to, and she chooses not to. And I think that really speaks on her character in a lot of ways, that she's willing to still be there for Kanye, even when Kanye isn't the best person when it comes to press. Like, I know people have this perception of the Kardashians and Kanye that he does all of this stuff for hype, and he likes the attention on him, which I think he does like the attention on him, but I don't think that he says controversial things just to be controversial. I think that he says these things because he truly believes them. It's just they're so out of the realm of what normal people would say, and that it's kind of taken in a bad way. And someone like Kim Kardashian, like her brand, in a lot of ways, I feel like it has to be affected by Kanye. And I think it goes vice versa. Like when Kanye first started dating Kim, people were kind of like, "Oh, Kanye's not the same person anymore. He's this, he's that," and people often still do say those things about him. But it really says something that they've, still kept their relationship so strongly together, at least in the public eye. Even with Kanye being the way that he is. Another track I really liked was No Mistakes. Not necessarily lyrically. I've read some of the lyrics, and according to Genius, they're alluding to Drake, like with the light skin line and stuff like that. I don't really see that. I don't know, maybe I'm just not reading into it enough. But the production on that song, absolutely amazing. Like Charlie Wilson and Kid Cudi sound amazing on the hook. And the way that they flip like that Slick Rick sample with the soulfulness of Cudi and Charlie Wilson, absolutely dope. Just amazing. Like it sounds like summer music. It just puts a smile on my face immediately when I heard it. Like it sounds like a song that will put you in a good mood. My favorite song probably on the album though is Ghost Town. It might be even like one of my favorite Kanye West songs like ever. I think that Kanye really, it's just a standout track. Like I feel like he utilized everyone really, really well. But the real star on the track is 070 Shake. She's an up and coming rapper that I've known about for about, I believe it's like 2 years. She released a song called Trust Nobody, and I was a pretty big fan of it when it first dropped. She just dropped like an EP called Glitter earlier in the year. Wasn't too big into it, but I really like the sound of her voice and the sound of like the flow. I feel like she has a very unique, she's bringing something unique to the table in a lot of ways, and I hope that she's able to get in a room with some good writers and possibly come out with a good project. I just hope that she isn't like underutilized or just used for like good projects similar to like Casey Hill or even Designer in a lot of ways, because I feel like Designer just isn't doing anything as far as hype goes. But yeah, I think her vocals on this song absolutely amazing. What she sang doesn't really make an insane amount of sense in regards to touching a stove to see if you still bleed. I initially thought from the listening party that she was saying star. It made a little bit more sense to me. Stove, you might bleed from putting your hand on a stove, and I kind of get what Kanye is trying to say in regards to he's always like touching hot button topics, things like that, but not the most thought provoking lyric to me. But I think that she does the vocals very well on that song. And the album closes out with the Violent Crime song, similar to what I was saying before in regards to kind of track 3 being like a juxtaposition in regards to Violent Crimes. He's talking a lot about, how he's going to feel when his daughter grows up and how she's going to be perceived by a lot of people, and how he's going to be protective and stuff of that nature. If you've ever heard the song Daughters by Nas, very, very similar. But I think that the production on the song, once again, absolutely amazing. I've never really liked Deej Loaf, but I think she sounds pretty great on this hook. Like the intro on the hook, the way that her voice is used sounds so like airy and spacey, I guess. And I think that they really made a good choice for including her on the album. So yeah, kind of in closing, much like my thoughts on the Pusha T album, absolutely love that it's short. I'm a little bit disappointed that it's short because, if we're gonna wait another 2 years for a full Kanye project, then I'm gonna be I'm gonna be disappointed because I know that we have Kids See Ghosts next week with Kid Cudi, but I feel like the sound of a Kanye project is something that we don't get very often, and only getting like a 20-minute project of that sound, it's just not enough of a good thing. Like last night when I'm listening to it on the listening party, they play the very end of Violent Crimes, which I will add, ends absolutely terribly. I don't know why he included that reference voicemail by Nicki Minaj. Doesn't seem like a proper way to end an album that's so like personal and heartfelt. But you know, maybe there's some more context that we don't know. I'm not too sure. Uh, but ultimately, I as soon as the album ended, I was like, okay, like where's the next song? I didn't think that was the end. Then they played it back and they started from the very beginning, and I was like, wow, that's it. Pusha T's album was only 20 minutes as well, but I really felt like Kanye was gonna do maybe 30, 40 minutes, 40-minute album with the 7 tracks, but unfortunately not, I guess. Ultimately, though, like The Life of Pablo was my least favorite Kanye album for the exact reason that it was too bloated. If Kanye was able to take 7 or 8 of those songs from Pablo and make them into one cohesive project, it would have been great. I would have I would have liked it a lot more. But it felt like there was so many moments on the life of Pablo that just didn't need to be there, like Lowlights and the Silver Surfer interlude. If he just removed maybe 5 or 6 songs, that could have been one of Kanye's best albums. But it just felt so sporadic and all over the place, which I think was Kanye's intention. It's just, I don't know. I'm kind of glad that he was able to condense it here, but at the same time, I wish that I had a little bit more to choose from in that regard. Overall, though, I think I'm gonna have this album on repeat pretty much all summer. I haven't yet decided if I like Daytona more than Kanye's album. It's kind of, they're neck and neck right now. I've been listening to Daytona a lot. Like I've probably played it, I would say 16 or 17 times entirely. Like it's pretty much on constant rotation. And this Kanye album, since last night, I've probably listened to it 4 or 5 other separate times. And each listen, I'm kind of picking more and more things that I like about it, and even some things that I dislike. So it's going to be hard to determine ultimately which one I enjoy more. But I think that Kanye right now, like this point in time, this Wyoming saga that we have going on with the 5 albums, is really going to be a benchmark point in his legacy. Like I think that we're gonna look back on Wyoming as like how we look at Hawaii for My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy when it comes to the collaborative efforts and just the overall feeling of the projects. I think that it's going to be one of those moments that we're going to talk about with Kanye for a long time. So far, he's 2 for 2 for me. And with Kids See Ghosts coming out next week, the Nas album, and then the Tiana Taylor album, I, I'm excited. There's nothing really much more else I can say. I feel like Kanye isn't going to disappoint. Like I don't think that he can really mess up one of those projects for me yet. Overall, I think as far as the album Ye goes, right now, it's a 7.5 out of 10 for me. We might see it go up a little bit, we might see it go down a little bit, but upon, you know, my first 12 hours with it, I would say it's easily a 7.5.